Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Decapitated, Cancer Culture, out May 27th on Nuclear Blast. This album has 10 tracks, 37 minutes in length, and this the band's 8th full-length studio album. They are a Polish death metal band. The transition that this album starts with from the intro track into Cancer Culture is absolutely phenomenal, and it sets the tone and it sets the bar for how this album moves from song to song, how fluid this album is, and how engaging the overall journey from the first to the last track becomes. It's 37 minutes that feels like 5 minutes of fun and enjoyment. So this adds to the playability. It makes you want to listen to the album time and time and time again, because you just can't get enough of how the album sounds, how the album feels, and that movement is a catalyst to that experience. So I love the design, and this is not an album that it's easy to put together as far as track listing is concerned, because there's a lot of different nuances. They go outside the box vocally and musically quite a bit throughout this entire record. I'm not going to go as far as to say that this album is very diverse, because it's not, but it does have some out of the box elements when you start to think about Decapitated sound and what the sound is going to be like on this album. So when you have those elements, you have to create a structure, you have to create a design that helps blunt those changes so that they can be better merged into the overall flow, into the overall experience, so that you experience them, but they don't become the experience. And this album really has all the right ingredients as far as design is concerned in order to give you that feel. As far as the soundscape, there are two things that jump immediately at me the moment I start to think about the overall sound experience on this album. One is how heavy this album comes across without overwhelming the listener. Once again, not an easy thing to do, because the brutality of this album is undeniable. This is a very, very heavy record, consistently heavy from start to finish. And the fact that they're able to create an album this heavy, this brutal, without really decimating the listener or giving you a sense of being overwhelmed by the experience is something that needs to be noted. The other aspect of the sound is how groovy the record becomes. The melodies, the movement, the bends that this album has sound-wise really make the album interesting from a soundscape perspective. It's a record that is as heavy as it is groovy. It's not more of one and less of the other. It's equal amounts of both. And the two elements that drive the heaviness and drive the grooviness on this album are undeniably the drums and guitars, the two pillars of this entire record. The drums are outstanding. I'm blown away by the quality of the drums from start to finish. That heaviness, that power, that sense of just coming at you, guns blazing, really is defined by the drum sound across every single track. They sound demolishing on every single song. There are some moments where they take a little bit of a step back, but those moments are very few and far in between. The momentum that the drums give to the overall sound, to the overall movement of the album, the heaviness that they give, the power that they give is phenomenal, because they do it in such a way that has substance, that has texture, that feels more palpable. You're able to digest this heaviness a lot better because of the sound quality from the drums. And then you have the guitars, and this is where the grooviness comes in, because the guitars obviously help with the heaviness as far as the drums are concerned. They pair up a lot of the times in order to give you that sense of heaviness or make that sound feel even bigger than what it really is. But the grooviness that the guitars have really balance out the soundscape. They are phenomenal. The guitar sound on this record is also phenomenal. I love the introduction of new elements guitar-wise, some more melodic, even melancholic, somber elements that change the atmosphere of certain songs, that change the way you perceive certain tracks. And the way they were able to blend that grooviness and that heaviness really becomes the defining element. I said it earlier on that when you start to introduce new elements into a record and you start to change or go a little bit outside the box of what's expected from you as a band, you have to be able to blend them in so that the experience doesn't become those differences. They add to the experience, but they're not the experience. And I felt like the death metal sound the heaviness that's coming from the drums and guitars, predominantly the drums, and then the grooviness of the guitars blending in perfectly in order to never really give you a sense of one versus the other, but rather a new soundscape, a new experience, really allows them to go outside the box, change a few things here and there, and the overall soundscape of this album still feels very balanced, still feels very cohesive. The album never loses itself. It never loses character. The character that it has at the beginning is the same kind of character that holds all the way through, but the nuances are there. They're just very well merged, very well blended in this overall experience, and you're able to digest everything a lot better. You're eating a lot, but it's coming in small portions, and that is the perfect design if you are trying to go into different avenues, if you're trying to expand the footprint of your sound and what you want your record to be like. As far as vocals are concerned, this record has two guest vocalists on two different tracks. It has Rob Flynn from Machine Head, and it has Tatiana of Ginger. Now, those two tracks are very different from one another. The one with Tatiana has a little bit of a Ginger sound to it. The one with Rob Flynn, I wouldn't say that it has a Machine Head sound to it, because this album actually has a huge fingerprint of Machine Head on it. I really feel like the groovier side of this album pulls influence from the early works of Machine Head and perhaps even the upcoming album. It's undeniable. You start to rub shoulders with certain individuals, you're going to take some characteristics into your own sound, into your own music. This record is a perfect example of that if you walk with someone, you start to take some of their traits and becoming part of your own traits. This album has all of that. So I like these two guest vocalists in terms of what they add. They bring clean vocals into this record, something that we hadn't seen before, and they add value to the construction of the songs. I'm more of a fan of what Rob Flynn did on his track because I felt it was closer in terms of the vibe, in terms of the sound, in terms of experience of what the whole album was all about. Tatiana really breaks this record. Her song sounds completely different from anything else that you've heard before and anything else that you come after. But it was a really interesting approach to have them coming in and not coming in necessarily with their heavier side of their range, but rather the more melodic, clean singing vocals, which adds a different atmosphere to these tracks. And if you're going to bring somebody in, they have to be different from what you already have, and that's exactly what they did. The rest of the vocals are pretty uniform from start to finish, but they fit perfectly into this death metal groove sound. They just have the right raspiness, they just have the right heaviness, the right punch to really kick the doors down and allow the songs to feel absolutely complete. Now, this is a record that is going to turn some heads. I really feel like this album has enough new elements in it to feel a little bit distant from the previous Decapitated record, but it's still Decapitated nevertheless. I love this sound, I love this blend, I love this approach, I love the overall feel of this record. The heaviness blew me away. This is a magnificent design and executed album from top all the way to the bottom. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with No Cure. The drums and guitars together, demolishing. I mean, this track is pure heaviness, and then the vocals put a stamp on that heaviness. The grooviness that's blended in with the heaviness makes that heaviness feel a little bit softer, or at least a little bit easier to digest, but it doesn't take anything away from it. The lead going into the solo is great, and then the solo really explodes onto the track, allows you to feel like there is energy getting pumped into it. It becomes a little bit somber after the solo. The song takes a deep dive into a more somber sound, somber nature, but then it emerges itself back again with the heaviness that we saw at the start, almost going full circle. But it's a song that definitely takes you on a weird journey in between, from the lead to the solo to the out of the solo section of the track. That whole area there has some progressive vibes in it that are very different from everything before and everything after. So it's squeezed in between all the heaviness that the track holds. Next you have Iconoclast, the song that features Rob Flynn on vocals, and the drums on this song. I know I keep talking about the drums, but the drums on this song are insane. Like, is it even humanly possible to play the drums like this on a freaking track? I was going to curse. On a track from start to finish, it's absolutely out of this world. It's unforgiving, the drum sound on this song. It has this balls to the wall, death metal, groove metal, blended approach from start to finish, or almost start to finish. Because when the clean vocals come in on this track, when Rob takes his takes the mic, if you will, the mood changes. The atmosphere of this song goes somewhere else. You still feel like there is brutality there, but the brutality is not in the sound, it's not in the way it comes across, it's in the message itself and the way it's being perceived. Because that darkness, that somber feel, that feeling of being uneasy with what's around you really makes this song pop. It's almost a little bit of a small reprieve in the world of heaviness that surrounds this track. And the drums are that world. Those walls are closing in heavier and faster and faster. Last but not least, Hours as Battlegrounds. This has that somberness that we saw in that clean vocal approach that Iconoclast had. This song has it musically. So it starts off with a very somber opening where the drums almost feel like they're just there as a heartbeat of the track. And then you start to feel like the whole song is coming in together with a lot more heaviness. But that somberness never goes away. It's a song that has ebbs and flows, that has peaks and valleys. It has jolts of power, jolts of aggression, jolts of heaviness from guitars and drums together as one. And then it has these deep, deep, deep valleys of just pure melodic bliss that becomes just pure melancholic. And it just feels like it's not moving anywhere. You feel like you're sinking into this quicksand of sound, and then you get this jolt of heaviness that brings you back up again, and then you start to sink back down again. It's an incredible song from that perspective. The ebbs and flows are absolutely phenomenal, and this track has, in my humble opinion, the best solo on the entire record. The solo on this song is phenomenal. It really feels explosive. It feels like an outburst of everything that you've been holding in on the inside. When you have a song that's very Jackal and high, that has two clear-cut momentums, you need a solo that just destroys both of them. That doesn't go with one and it doesn't go with the other. And this solo is a little bit of that. It's a little bit of a break of the mold. It has energy, it has light, it feels larger than life, it feels big. It still has some elements of heaviness in it, but it's all about how big and how much it expands within the track itself. And then you go back to those ebbs and flows. Phenomenal track, really interesting as far as the design, the sound, and the concept of putting it together. This is it. This is Decapitated with Cancer Culture, out May 27th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.